Hey guys, so you might have noticed things are a little different this week. Hopefully, you joined us for our block party yesterday. We had a ton of fun between 11 and 2, but that meant services didn't happen the way they normally do. In lieu of one big message that happens all on Sunday morning, we're going to be doing 5 mini messages throughout the week. We did communion yesterday, we had worship yesterday, we had community yesterday, but we still think it's important to get into the Word. If the lockdowns a couple of years ago taught me anything, it made something true that we've been saying a long time, but it really convinced me that church doesn't just happen on Sunday. It doesn't just happen in this building, that we are the church, that we can touch base with one another throughout the week, that we can learn and worship and grow as we go. And so this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm going to be giving 5 mini messages about what it means to teach. See, all this month we've been doing this series called Encounters, and it's these people who literally encountered Jesus and walked away changed. We talk a lot around here about our mission, the mission that Jesus gave the church to go and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything he has commanded. And so week 1, we talked about Jesus meeting Zacchaeus, who he literally went to his house. He got to know him and he was changed as a result. Week 2, we talked about Peter making disciples. Jesus was walking by the sea. He saw Peter and his brother throwing nets and he said, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And then last week, we heard about baptizing. Jesus has this encounter with John the Baptist. That makes a lot of sense to talk about baptism and how he decided to practice baptism in his own life and encourage us to do the same, what that means for us. So we have these 4 big things: go, make, baptize, and teach. And this week we're going to be focusing just on that last one, teaching as a means of fulfilling the Great Commission to make disciples. Now, maybe this is a little boring, but in order to really get this the right way, we have to have a little bit of a grammar lesson. There is something called an imperative. That is the thing that Jesus wants you to do. So the mission that he gave the church, the imperative, the thing you got to do, is make disciples. That's actually one word in the Greek, make disciples. Well, how do we accomplish that? In order to accomplish that, he gave us 3 other words, and I think they're called participles, which is going, baptizing, and teaching. And the grammar lesson aside, this might be a little intuitive for you. If I told you to go and make tacos, I would say, make tacos by getting the tortilla, by getting the meat, by getting the cheese, and this is how you accomplish the task of tacos. Well, making disciples is a little bit of a higher calling, but the grammar doesn't change. So I know you guys can get this. We have to teach to make disciples. So the encounter that we're studying this week is when Jesus meets the woman at the well in John chapter 4. And to set the stage, I want to talk about how good teaching makes disciples. That's what we just talked about, how teaching is a means of satisfying this Great Commission. It's as simple as that. In order to make disciples the way that God has commanded us to do, we have to incorporate teaching into our lives. And that might be intimidating for you. That might sound a little boring to you. But I hope that over the next 4 days, we will talk enough about what good teaching is and what good teaching is not, that you feel like you can do it, that you can fulfill this responsibility, this obligation, this privilege that God has placed on your life as one of his followers in order to make more followers. Welcome to day 2 of talking about how we fulfill the Great Commission by teaching. The encounter we're discussing this week is the woman at the well in John chapter 4. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start around verse 7. It says this: "A woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, 'Give me a drink,' for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, 'How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans.' Jesus answered her, 'If you knew the gift of God and who it was that is saying to you, "Give me a drink," you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water.'" Have you ever talked to somebody who clearly has an agenda for the conversation? Maybe it was a salesperson or somebody seeking religious converts, or like a multi-level marketing proposal. I don't know about you, but those conversations normally make me pretty uncomfortable. One, because the whole time I'm waiting to say no to whatever they want from me, because I know that they have expectations of me, and that the conversation for them isn't a success unless I do the thing that they want me to do, or buy the thing they want me to buy, or agree to the idea that they're trying to sell me. I feel like in those conversations, I am not a person. I am just another opportunity to advance whatever they're selling. I'm just another number for the number of pitches that they're making. They don't see Lynwood. You've had conversations like that, I'm sure, where you know the person isn't actually listening to you. They're just waiting to say the thing that they've been planning to say. Jesus doesn't do this. We see in this conversation, he had something that he wanted to say, but he saw the woman in front of him, and he told her what he knew she needed to hear. So she's talking about whatever she'd like to talk about, how, well, I'm a woman of Samaria, and you're a man who's a Jew, and why are you talking to me? And he just asks her for a drink. And once she gets sidelined with all this other stuff, Jesus continued to make what he was saying relevant. He said, if you knew who it was that was talking to you, if you knew who it was that was asking you for a drink, you would ask him, and he would give you living water. What I want to talk about today is how good teaching finds relevance. There was a conversation being had. Jesus didn't cold approach her with a Roman road tract. No, he came alongside of her. He got to know her. He spoke with her. And when the conversation was about water, well, that's what Jesus talked about. There's this another famous story in the book of Acts that I always think of when I talk about finding relevance, finding commonality. Paul was walking through this place called Mars Hill, or the Areopagus, which was home to all of these philosophers. And it said they had all these different statues of the gods that they worshiped. And he saw one that said, "To an unknown God." Paul didn't get right into his agenda. He didn't just say whatever he wanted to say, treating them like an opportunity to advance whatever he had going on. He knew them, and he said, hey, I see you guys have this statue that says "To an unknown God. Can I talk to you about that unknown God, this thing that you already say that you believe in?" Good teaching finds relevance. It helps people in a way that they can hear. One of the things that I have had to learn in my life is that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. I have to see the human in front of me before I can even dare to think that I can teach them something. I don't want to be another talking head. I want to be a friend. I want to be part of their heavenly family. And in order to do that, we have to have honest conversations that are relevant to them. In the book of James, it says this: if a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of them says to you, "Go in peace, be warmed and filled," without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? See, we have this message. We call it the good news. We believe that Scripture provides us with this overarching narrative for what life is and what we should do in it. But you can't just walk up to someone and unload this whole story on them without really seeing them. See, the good news is good because it matters for us, because it meets us where we are. Jesus is the answer for every soul. But we have to connect the dots for people. Are you lonely? Well, Jesus can offer community. Are you anxious? Well, Jesus can offer peace. Are you on the verge of divorce? Well, he teaches us about humility and about reconciliation. People have real problems in their life and they are desperate for help, but they want to know the help is coming from a good place. So wade in, find relevance. Good teaching is relevant. Now, that's just the jumping off point for our conversation. And just like the water was the jumping off point for the conversation that Jesus really knew the woman at the well needed to have, we do need to eventually get to the point, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. So welcome back to day 3 of our very last lesson in the series called Encounters, where Jesus encounters the woman at the well in John chapter 4. This story teaches us what it means to be good teachers as a means of fulfilling the Great Commission to go and make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them. Teaching is obviously something important, but something that many of us might find uncomfortable or intimidating. So we're talking about what it means to be a good teacher. Our text today starts in verse 15. It says this: The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water." Jesus had just offered her living water. Jesus said to her, "Go and call your husband and come here." The woman answered him, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You are right in saying, 'I have no husband,' for you have had 5 husbands, and the one that you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet." So let's get something straight. This was a shocking story to the original audience. Jesus was meeting alone with a woman, and at the time that was pretty scandalous. She acknowledges this, right? She said, "Why are you a Samaritan talking, or why are you a Jew talking to me, a Samaritan?" Later on in the passage, when Jesus' disciples come back, they say they marveled that he was talking to a woman, but no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" So we have a lot of things going on here. A man is talking to a woman alone, and a Jew is talking to a Samaritan, something they wouldn't normally do. But there's a third element to the story, and it's hard to talk about the story in any meaningful way without addressing it. Why was the woman alone at the well? Well, maybe if you've been in church for a while, you have heard before, it's because she was ostracized from the community. Normally, you'd want to go with all the other women to get water in the morning, but she didn't feel very welcome there, perhaps the subject of gossip and insults, and so she waits until later in the day when no one else is there. It's hotter, it's harder, but it's worth it for her because it means that she doesn't have to be around all of these people that have rejected her for her lifestyle. One that Jesus calls out. He said, "You've had 5 husbands, and the person you're with now isn't your husband." And she said, "Wow, you must be a prophet." So what's amazing is that Jesus is overcoming these social barriers to engage with a woman who needed him desperately. He didn't care if she was a Samaritan. He didn't care if she was a woman. To him, she was a person that needed help. And that's what I want you to know about good teaching today, is that good teaching meets people where they're at. Being a good teacher means acknowledging that those around you are worth investment. That's what good teachers today do. Maybe you can think back to your school experience. Maybe you were the class clown, or maybe you had trouble reading or with math. And hopefully there was someone in your life who looked at you and said that, "No, you're worth it. I believe you can do it, whether or not it takes extra time or care or attention, that I won't give up on you because you have value." Those are the teachers that change our lives, and those are the types of teachers we can be when we embrace Jesus' example. He met the woman where she was at. It was a starting place. He didn't want to leave her there, but he saw the value that she had, and it was worth looking scandalous. It was worth breaking society's rules. Now, it's pretty hard for me to tell you this because this is one of the things I think the church is bad at. And just to make it personal, it's one of the things I'm really bad at. See, we talk a lot about seeking and saving the lost. We talk a lot about loving the least of these, about praying for those who persecute us. But those things are a lot easier to say than they are to do. Maybe you're a super Christian. Maybe you're better than me at this. But encountering people like that, people who really need help, is messy. In fact, I'm messy. I had to call myself on this the other day to recognize the inherent worth of the individual as someone who is made by God and loved by God, just as much as he loves me or anyone else. I was in a rush. I was running late. I realized I needed to get gas. So I pulled over into the gas station and I put my card in, and sure enough, it said, "Please go see cashier." There was a problem with the machine. So I walk in and there's a long line. And at the front of the long line is a woman paying entirely with coins, digging deep for the bottom of her purse to get those last few pennies. And my first response was annoyance and irritation. It was inconveniencing me. I was in a rush. The machine didn't work. Now I have to wait behind a woman counting quarters. Doesn't she know that the other people are in line? And I heard God remind me that I was way too caught up in myself, that I was surrounded by souls. I was surrounded by people made in the image of God, and that woman was no different. And I began to think, listen, maybe she just liked saving and spending quarters, but I began to think that maybe there were some other circumstances that led her here. Maybe she spent the last of her money feeding her kids. Maybe she was on hard times. Maybe those quarters were the only money she had to pay for gas to get to a job interview to change her lot in life. And I didn't know any of that. But I could imagine that and see that she had some unique struggles. And instead of considering the few minutes that was taking out of my day, I began to empathize with her and wonder how her life could be different. That's an opportunity we have all the time, but an opportunity we don't seldom take. When you teach, you have to meet people where they're at. If people were perfect, they wouldn't need your help. And so to whatever degree you meet them in their imperfection, if you are a Christian, you have good news that has the potential to change their life. And what it means for you is self-sacrifice. What it means for you is humility, to take the time to accept the inconvenience, to serve faithfully, and to share lovingly. A bad teacher is someone who wants to get people told. A good teacher is someone who wants to make people whole. We've all met people like that, people who have their Bible, who have their notes, who have an order of things that they want to tell you, but they don't see you. We need to meet people where they're at because we have the good news that can make them whole. Hey, welcome back to day 4, talking about Jesus' encounter with the woman at the well. This is through John 4, and we're talking about how the teaching that Jesus gives this woman had the power to change her life, to make her a disciple, and how we can use teaching to fulfill God's great commission of making disciples of all nations. So, yesterday we talked about how good teaching meets people where they're at. That if you're having a conversation, you don't want to push an agenda. You want to see the person in front of you. You want it to be relevant. You want to engage them in a natural flow of conversation. But good teaching isn't aimless. When you teach, there has to be a point, a so what, a piece of information you learn that hopefully you can apply. And that's exactly what Jesus does in the story today. He shows us that good teaching gets to the heart of the matter. In verse 21, it says this, Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that the Messiah is coming, who is called the Christ. When he comes, he will teach us all things." Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." So in case you missed it, so far in the conversation, Jesus walks up to a woman at the well. He says, "Will you draw me some water?" And she said, "Why are you, a Jew, talking to me, a Samaritan?" He said, "If you knew who it was that was talking to you, you would ask him to give you living water so that you would never thirst again." He went on to talk about her background as a woman who had 5 husbands and who was living with a man now who wasn't her husband. And she said, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet." And then she launches into this theological conversation about, well, the Jews worship here and the Samaritans worship here, and which is right and which is wrong. And Jesus answers her question. But did you see where he landed? He landed on the fact that he was the Messiah. See, this is the information she needed to know. She needed to know that there was a Savior. There was this anointed one, that's what Christ means, who was coming to change everything, to fulfill everything, and that mattered for her. See, after Jesus tells her about what she's done and who he is, she did exactly what most of us would try to do. She changed the subject. When confronted with the truth about her life, she doesn't talk about what adultery means or why she was in that situation, why she made those choices, or why the community had ostracized her. She starts asking theological questions. And Jesus engages with them to an extent. He's not dismissive, but he gets to the heart of the matter. When you encounter people, I think you can expect the same thing. I'm in a slightly unique lot in life where one of the questions people want to ask all the time is, well, what do you do for a living? And, well, I'm a minister. And rather than talking about what that means for me or what that might mean for them, they ask me all sorts of questions. So what do you think about praying to saints? What do you think about infant baptism? What do you think about the end times? And those things can matter, but I don't think those are the things that matter right then. I want to talk about how Jesus has changed my life, about the stories of the people whose lives I see transformed, in whose lives I see the Spirit at work. I want to talk about what that might mean for them. Do they worship? Do they believe? Why or why not? What experiences did they have? But people use debate as a means to hide. They want to engage in these grand theological conversations because when you do that, you don't have to talk about you. And I'm not blaming them. That's a very natural reaction. And that's probably why the woman in our story today had that exact same reaction. But if you're going to use teaching to make a difference in the lives of others, you need to be able to get to the point. Good teaching gets to the heart of the matter. I want so desperately for people to get to know Jesus. And when we confuse the conversation with these extraneous subjects, we miss the point. What we're going to be talking about tomorrow is how Jesus provides hope, because he is the point of it all. And I'm so excited to talk to you about that. Hey, this is day 5 of talking about fulfilling the Great Commission of making disciples through teaching. And Jesus teaches us the best way to do this in John chapter 4 when he encounters the woman at the well. This is going to be our last day talking about this, and I've saved my favorite for last, so hopefully you enjoy it. There's the saying I learned in college that maybe you've heard before. It says, people don't need a sage on the stage, they need a guide on the side. And what they were trying to communicate is people's lives aren't transformed by some guru in an ivory tower who can dole out answers from on high. What they really need is for someone to go through things with them, to help them to be learners who think for themselves as opposed to blind followers of whatever this supposedly accomplished, successful, or smart person says. We equip people to be successful, to find answers on their own, to overcome challenges on their own. And the way that we do that is through introducing them to Jesus, because he is a much better guide than we could ever be. John 4, verse 28. So the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me all I ever did. Can this be the Christ?" They went out of the town and were coming to him. Many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me all that I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them. And he stayed there 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. They said to the woman, "It is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this is indeed the Savior of the world." So there was a response from Jesus' conversation with the woman. He said, "I who am speaking to you is the Christ." And she runs away and tells everyone that, I just met this prophet. He knew all that I ever did. Is he the Christ? And people came and found out for themselves. And it wasn't because of what the woman said. That's what they said. It's not because you told us. It's because we saw for ourselves. And so I think one of the biggest hurdles to being a good teacher is a misconception that we have. That a teacher has to be the smartest person in the room, the most learned person in the room, that they have to have all of the answers. And time I hear this again from you guys. I would love to step up and be a small group leader. I would love to be a table group leader. I would love to be a ministry leader. I would love to share with my neighbors, but I'm afraid that they're going to ask me questions that I don't know the answer to, that I don't know the whole Bible. What do I say if they say this or that? And what I want to encourage you to do is to take a breath. Because of Jesus, you can be a good teacher without having all the answers. Here's why I think this. One of my favorite scriptures, perhaps the one I say more than any other, says, "You search the scriptures thinking that in them you will find life, but really it is they that point to me." And that was Jesus saying that. So people are poring over page after page. They're parsing individual words and trying to find out just how do you live out this commandment or that one. And Jesus said, you're missing the point. The point of the scriptures is not the scriptures themselves. It's to get to know the person of Jesus, to whom all of them attest, in whom all of them are fulfilled. Jesus is the key, and that's why we call ourselves Christians, little Christs. We want to get to know him. We want to live life with him. We want to live like he lived. And so to be a good teacher, no, you don't have to have all of the answers. The best guide on the side that anyone could ever have is Jesus. And so your job when teaching is to introduce people to him. Like the woman at the well, she shared her experience. But their story, the other Samaritans, did not end there. They went to meet that man. They saw who he was. They heard what he said. And they were never the same as a result. That's what the series of encounters is all about, meeting the man Jesus. And sure, he walked the earth 2,000 years ago. But you can still meet him today. You can still talk to him today. That is life-changing good news. And so if you're going to teach anything, teach that, because good teaching brings hope.